Have you ever lost files or a full Windows installation to a virus? Well, today we are going to look at the first virus that affected IBM PCs. And even though it is called the Brain virus, it has no malicious intent. But we'll get to this later. In order to perform this experiment, we need a few things. First, we need a 5¼ floppy drive. This is something I found at the scrapyard, and it is in really good condition. I cleaned this already up, and this is the model number. It's a DEBUG FD55GFR. This is a 1.2 megabyte drive. It has two read heads. One is on the top and one is on the bottom. And when I got this drive, it was so dusty that I actually had to wash it underwater. It was covered in dust everywhere. I don't think there was any possibility to just wipe it clean with a tissue. No, I had to completely soak it. Luckily, the drive survived and it does work. I already tested this. I, in fact, prepared this floppy disk, which has the Brain virus on it. So yeah, this is an infected floppy disk. I also have a second disk here. This is a normal boot disk. But yeah, we get to this later. What else do we need? We need a floppy cable that has these funny connectors, these bigger ones. These are for 5¼ inch floppy drives. So one end goes to our 5¼ inch floppy drive and the other end goes to our motherboard. And this is actually a cable where I can hook up two floppy drives, drive A and drive B, but we'll only have one floppy drive. So when I turn this floppy drive around, these are very heavy. They're built like tanks. So here's our DEBUG. This is the motor here, and you have some PCBs, and here's our power connector. I think this is something proprietary. I don't know what this is. And here's our data connector. And it has a notch. Also, our cable has a notch. Here's a notch. So this one would go on the drive like this. Okay, I'll prepare a system now. It will be a 486DX2, and we are going to boot it using this drive. And then I'll show you how this drive seeks on the disk. We have a perfect view on this. And here's our boot disk. You have to take these out very carefully. Don't ever touch the media, top and bottom. So this drive has two read heads, one on the top, one on the bottom. So we can read both sides of the disk easily. But I think there were drives that only had one read head. So what you had to do is when you wanted to read the other side, you had to pull the disk out, turn it around, and put it back in the drive. Luckily, we don't have to do this. And before I close it, let me hook up the rest of the system, and then I will see you when everything is set up. Okay, data is connected, power is connected. Let's see if something moves when I power on the system. No, a little bit. But the first thing what we have to do is we have to go into the BIOS and set up our floppy drive, because I'm pretty sure I have it set to 1.44 megabytes. Yes, I have my drive A configured for 1.44 megabytes. This one has to go to 1.2 megabytes, 5¼ inch. Also, I'll remove all hard drives. We are booting from floppy disks today. Now let's load our floppy disk. I already put it in a drive, but I didn't close the lever. Oh, you can see something is spinning. Yeah, and here is our drive ready to be used. So then let's see what happens when we go into the boot process. And here we go. So, and we get even the correct date and time. So yeah, we have MS-DOS, and here are our DOS boot files. So we have command.com, we have mem, debug, format, and Debrain, which we will get to in a moment. Great. So our system is up and running. Our floppy drive works. Our boot disk works. System works. Great. But now let's talk a little bit about the Brain virus before we get started. So, what is Brain and why is it considered a virus? The Brain virus is widely considered the first virus that affected and targeted IBM and PC compatible systems. It was a boot sector virus that infected 5¼ inch floppy disks, and it spread its payload to other systems when an infected disk was inserted. The virus was created by two brothers in Pakistan, the brothers Alvi. Now, if you're watching my videos from Pakistan, please let me know in the comments. I really would like to know. And yeah, these two brothers designed this little application that sits in the boot sector in 1986 as a means to protect their medical software from unauthorized copying and piracy. Unfortunately, the Alvi brothers never expected that that virus would spread globally. It was intended for the Pakistani market only. And when the virus spread beyond Pakistan and infected over 100,000 floppy disks by late 1980s, it marked the beginning of the PC virus epidemics. By the way, today those two brothers are still in business. They are no longer selling their medical software, but they're running an internet service provider. It is considered a virus because it can self-replicate. It loads itself into memory and intercepts any read or write operation to the floppy drive. If an uninfected disk is detected, it will self-replicate. It basically copies itself to the boot sector of the uninfected disk, writes the original boot sector somewhere on the disk, and changes the label of the floppy disk to copyright Brain. It does this all without the user's consent, and that is why it is considered a virus. Today, we are going to run this virus. We are going to unleash the first computer virus on my 486 DX266. Let's boot from an infected floppy disk. Okay, so far doesn't look any different. We get the correct date, we get the correct time, and we even get the correct files. Let's check the memory. So conventional memory is only at 633. Something happened. Let me boot one more time from an uninfected floppy disk. Okay, and we are done. Here we still have our drive that is labeled as DOS boot, so nothing is affected because we know that the label should be changed to the copyright Brain. Maybe now it's a good time to quickly discuss what are the requirements for the virus to spread. Definitely what you need is a 5¼ inch floppy drive, but you also need a floppy disk that is formatted at 360 kilobytes. And you can do that under DOS. I inserted an empty disk into the drive. Unfortunately, we will not see how large the disk is. For that, we have to create a file. And I think we can use an ms-dos command, type myfile.txt. It should create a file. And now, yes, so now we can see how many bytes are free. So we have a 1.2 megabyte disk. Now I quickly need to swap the disks because I need to get access to the format utility. Make sure not to insert the infected disk. Okay, and here we should have format. So we can say format and see at all the options that there are. And we are looking for the /4. And this is the third line from the bottom. Formats a 5¼ inch 360K floppy disk in a high density drive. So this is what we need in order to make the virus spread. This is the command. And now let me load this quickly. Okay. Now format is loaded. Now I'll switch the floppy disks quickly. Okay. Checking disk format. Yes, proceed. And you can see we are formatting at 360 kilobytes. Format complete. Test disk. Okay. So now we have our test disk, but we don't see the size. So type null test txt. And you see we have 362,496 bytes. So this is something that is a requirement for the virus to spread. If you have a 3.5-inch floppy drive and disks, they will not be affected. And if you have a 5.25-inch disk, but it's a 1.2 megabyte disk, it will also not spread. Okay, now comes a little bit something technical. We are going to look into the boot sector of this floppy disk. This is my DOS boot disk. It is not infected. And we should see an MS-DOS boot sector because, well, we are booting to MS-DOS. And there is the MS-DOS bootloader in the boot sector of this disk. So we can use the debug utility that comes with MS-DOS. And you just load this application and there you get this dash. Debug allows us to read sector by sector. And what I want to read is the first sector on our drive. And we can do this by the following command. We first specify that we want to read. This is indicated by the letter L. Then we specify a memory location where this one sector should be copied to. It's just being copied into memory. So in this case, I will use 100. Next is which drive it is. For us, it's drive A, which is represented by the number 0. Drive B would be number 1, 2 for drive C, and so on. Next is the starting sector. It's 0 denominated, so we have the first sector at the number 0. And then we can specify how many sectors should be read. So we just care about the first sector. And it read the first sector into memory. And now we can also dump that sector on the screen. So next line is D100, and that's all we need to do. And here is our first part of the boot sector. Now, if you want to, you can dump more of this boot sector. Right now, it's just limited to these few lines, but we can dump a range. So for instance, we start from 100 and we go to 200. And now you can see that we are dumping a lot more of our boot sector. So, but this is something that we can use to look at the boot sector of our infected floppy disk. And the brain virus is in the drive. Now let's read the first sector one more time. L100, drive 0, 0, 1. So first sector, one sector to be read. Okay, we read the first sector. D100, 200. Oh, welcome to the dungeon. Copyright 1986 Brain. I think the brothers Alvi also put their phone number and address into the boot sector. So let's dump a little bit more. Oh, it has been removed, I think. It's not here right now. There was a version that actually had their phone number and address as part of the boot sector. So now that we know how the boot sector looks like, we can boot from the infected disk and see what we get when we try exactly the same thing. The boot sector should look like this. This is the boot sector that we read from the infected disk. But let's see what happens when we boot from that disk. Okay. We are in DOS and we have our debug application. You see we are in copyright Brain. So this is a sign that this is an infected disk, but this is my original disk. I haven't infected any other disk yet. And also keep in mind that when we are running mem, instead of 640, we see only 633. So let's try debug now. And let's read the first sector from the disk. That's interesting. The drive made a full move over the entire disk. I don't know if this was the same with an uninfected disk. But let's dump the memory location and see what we get. Oh, we do get a normal MS-DOS boot sector. This is the record of a normal MS-DOS boot sector. So, and just to show you, this is the infected disk. When we read this boot sector before, we got the virus signature. We got the virus information from that first sector. So this is a normal boot sector. And here we can see the stealth capability of this virus. If you wouldn't know that the virus is actually on this disk, it is very hard to discover. So we saw two giveaways. One was less conventional memory. Instead of 640, we only got 633 kilobytes. And second, when we boot from an uninfected disk and run debug to read the first sector from the disk, we get the virus signature. You will not be able to dump the sector 0 if you have booted from an infected disk. And this is the stealth capability. Basically, the virus that's sitting in memory is intercepting the read operation, and instead of giving you sector 0, which is the virus information, it actually gives you the original boot sector. And this is how this virus can remain hidden. Very interesting, fascinating stuff from 1986. So yeah, for now we have seen that the virus is actually present and it tries everything to hide itself from us. Now let's try to infect a disk. This is a disk I formatted before. We had the format command with the /4. This is a 360 kilobyte disk. So let's see. Will we see the spreading of the virus in action? Interesting, it did something. It did definitely more than just listing a directory. So what we wanted to see is to have the label as copyright brain. This did not happen. Let's reboot and boot from a clean boot disk. Actually, let's try mem quickly. Make sure that we have 640K. Yes, we do. So let's run debug. So yeah, this is our MS-DOS boot sector. All good. Let's read the boot sector from the infected disk. Oh, it is infected. It didn't change the label, so that is interesting. But we do definitely have the virus on the boot sector of this disk. It hid it very, very well. So yeah, this is a bootable disk which we can use to boot the system. But now let's accidentally boot from our infected disk, insert this new backup boot disk and see what's happening. I copied all files from my boot disk to this backup disk just so that we can look at memory and debug later on once we infected this disk. But now we need to boot from the infected disk first to load the virus into memory. 633 kilobytes of conventional memory. So the virus is in memory. Now the infected disk can go somewhere else. We only list the directories now. We are not doing anything else. We're just loading the directory listing. And I think this disk now is infected. This is my... Oh, it changed. Now it changed. Oh my goodness. I think maybe it has to be a bootable disk that it changes the label of the disk. This was a disk that had a label backup. Now it's copyright brain. There you have it. Okay, so what happens when we restart? And just so that you believe me that I'm not making things up, so here is my brain sticker on the infected disk, and this was my backup disk. And you can see that a lot of things are going on. This is the virus preparing itself, loading itself into memory. And here we go. So, mem command, the one that is 100% working with this virus. And yes, this disk is infected now. This was my boot disk that I prepared just moments ago. And now we have the virus on this disk. And it definitely changed to the brain virus. One sector. And the virus is forwarding the original boot sector. So yeah, it's hiding itself from us, but we know it's there. Because of the memory usage, we only have 633 kilobytes, and because the directory listing now says copyright brain. This didn't work with the other disk that was not bootable. So maybe it has to be a bootable disk for this to work. But yeah, it didn't work with the empty disk that I tried to do this on. Right now, when we dump the boot sector with debug, we should get the actual data that is in sector 0. So basically the virus information. And there you go. This is the first sector on this drive, and it has the virus information on this disk. Wow. Let's try now to debrain this disk. Oh, this disk appears to be infected by a brain type virus, but a good boot record was not found. Suggest you copy the files that you need and forward this disk to the Computer Science Center. Okay, maybe this Debrain version doesn't detect the boot sector or the good boot sector on the disk, because maybe it moved to a different sector, different location on the drive. That's a little bit unfortunate, so the only thing what I can do is now to format this disk, and we'll start over basically. Oh, interesting. So it detected that there is an issue with the boot sector. Red flags. Everywhere red flags. Now I need to make sure that this one doesn't get out. But let's say I'm sending one of these floppy disks to Tony, and then he's infecting all his disks, and then it goes to God knows where, and we have another pandemic of 5¼ inch floppy disks infected with the brain virus. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think. If you're from Pakistan, let me know in the comments. I really want to know. And let me know what you think about this project. Finally, I want to thank all my Patreons for their continued support. If you want to support my work and you find these things interesting, you can head over to Patreon, sign up for the free tier if you don't want to commit to a membership. But if you do want to support my work, pick one of the paid membership tiers. That would really help me out. Now I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Thank you. Take care and bye-bye.